Good morning. This is Taj McCameron for the ministry. I'm not ready to release the new name yet, so we're not going to do that. But I believe I've tailored it down and it's going to be coming together soon. And I believe it just fits everything that I'm trying to do. So you're about to see. It's going to be fun. But today we are going to be starting this new thing. I'm not calling it a series because there's going to be a lot of different things that I'm going to be talking about. So it's going to be more than just one thing. So what will happen is the more that we talk, I'm going to be creating individual playlists for each individual topic. So you'll be able to go back and look at each individual one. And it's going to go like that. And we're going to go from there. So it will be the topics in which you are most interested in will be in this. Each one will have its own playlist. So as I continue to bring out more videos, that's how it'll run. So how are we going to begin? Today's topic, we're talking about perception. Perception. Several years ago, I remember I was sitting in this place and I was going through a very hard experience. So I'm going to explain not the experience I was going through then, what I'm going through now, and how is relevant. Every person goes through a series of cycles of things happening. And if you track your cycles of these things happening, you'll actually begin to recognize a point-by-point formula as to how these things transpire. This is why if you follow anybody's ministry, you'll begin to notice that even they will say, "Oh wow, I did a video talking about this a year ago," because they were in a similar cycle and they were being tested in a similar way, and what they spoke about in that season was relevant. You see, when I first started talking and doing ministry related articles, I didn't call it a ministry. I was just doing blog posts on Facebook because that's what I did. I like to write, and I would get my thoughts out and my viewpoints out. And I listened to a lot of ministers around the time, whether I was going to church or I was listening to my ministers online. But as I was going through certain seasons, I would write article write-ups. And as I was writing these article write-ups, I started to notice a pattern. During certain seasons, I would be repeating similar topic matters. It was from a different perspective, but it was the same type of event. I can be telling you something here on this channel, and I guarantee you that I spoke about the same thing on my podcast, Steam to Live the Dream. Now, and the point of it is, I noticed that when I was going through certain seasons, I would either get a memory of a post on my Facebook, or I would go back through my old posts, and the posts that I would see, it would have something would be in it, and I would be like, "Oh wow, that is still relevant to this moment." And I'm like, wow. And get this, I used to time my posts out. So I would schedule my posts out at specific times and time frames because I didn't want to babysit my posts. So I would be like, okay, let me schedule these out for 4 or 5 weeks at a time. I would do that. And when I did that, I would come to find, wait, what? the day that it posted would either be relevant or be in alignment with all the other ministers that I was listening to, that the word that I released was the same thing they released at the same time. It was just from their point of view. And I was like, whoa. So it goes to show you, when God is speaking, his alignment may just fall into place when you don't even realize that it's a necessity at the time. But all things will fall into full, perfect alignment for you. Okay? So these articles, the fact that I'm even going over the topic matter again, this is in my Tumblr. This is a Tumblr that I've had since 2016, maybe. I might have had it longer than 2016 because I had it for a while and I never used it. And I think in 2016 was right around the time I started to use it. So 2015, 2016. So these articles that I'm literally reading or formulating my topic from are things that I wrote in the past, but I'm giving new revelation as to from the point at which I was writing it from to the point at which I am now. Okay? Alright. So today's topic is perception. So it's an interactive moment. Whatever you're going through in this particular time and in this particular season, I like to start off by going into the fact of faith is a substance of things hoped for, but the evidence of things not seen. You can perceive something that you have faith in, but you can't see it. Fear is the illusion of what you actually see in comparison to what you spiritually perceive is coming towards you. Okay? Now that is out of the way. At the time that I wrote this article, I was looking at a virtual video of a path walk. A lot of people, they are looking at a path that they are going along. But how do you perceive the travel? Now, this is going to be a fun point for me because I recently created a program called Pathways. It's in relation to, I wrote a book at around the same time I started writing these articles, because these articles were really literally a jumping point for what I was doing with that book at the time. And I did not have the name for it at the time. I forgot. I think I called it Transformational Change Maker or something, because that was what my original page name was, and I wanted to make that the name of the book, but it didn't quite fit. And I changed the name like 15 times between 2015 until I was walking one morning and I heard this. It was something that was, I heard this, like I saw in my mind the vision of what I wanted the book cover to look like. And I literally heard the statement, Pathways, 7 steps to success. And it came from the Pick Up Your Bed and Walk from the Bible. So I knew to change the book. But it wasn't until about a month ago I came up with the program for the Pathways. In it, there's a section I talk about where I talk about the journey. In that, we go through seasons. It's a dark season that you will end up going through And depending on your perspective of the season will determine whether you will enjoy the process or you will be begging, screaming, pleading like a hostage in a trapped cell to get the hell out of that place. 9 times out of 10, you will go for the latter. Because your season will look like absolute horror. I guarantee you, some people will go through seasons. It won't look as bad, but you'll feel like it's hell. I've been through a season where it looked like it was hell. It literally looked like it was hell. Let me tell you how literally it looked like it was hell. You remember them old video games? Just look up the commercial for it. It was a video game called Silent Hill, which was actually based on a city that was built on a volcanic fault city. But in it, these people would live on in this town, and in the town, you went through some hellish things. And every time the siren alarm would go off, it would be like this hellish state would take over the entire town, and it would go from normal to like you went to a completely different alternate dimension where everything was straight hell. Yeah, where I was felt like that. Literally, and sometimes, some days it looked like that too. Yeah. 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 But it's a perspective. Some people are going to look at a situation like that and see that as a normal experience. Perfect example. You take a person that grew up in poverty. They grew up in poverty. They grew up in the ghetto. All they ever saw was gun violence, drug abuse, drinking, people drinking their days away. They grew up in the projects. It was all kinds of nastiness and all kinds of what have you. And the perspective on life for them is, this is the slums and I ain't never getting out of here. But you take the same person that is driven, then that driven person is going to take their experience and they're going to be like, no. That's why I love the documentary by Mary J. Blige, where she talks about being in that place, being in the projects, growing up as a teenager, saying, I don't feel like I belong here. And she was telling her friend, I don't feel like I belong here. This is not where I belong. This is not where I'm supposed to be. And she had a vision for her future, but she didn't know how to get there. That's why Steam to Live the Dream was even born, because I created that for that person that felt like they had a scream inside of them saying, I don't belong here. How do I get out? That's what my podcast is about. But getting back to the pathway, you have to understand that there is a way, there's an actual route that you have to take in order to get from where you are to where you're going. And I'm going to explain this in a couple different ways. That the person in poverty, if they make the decision, I don't want to be in poverty no more, I don't want to continue to repeat the cycles, there is such a thing as, I believe they call it epigenetics. You might want to look that up. Where the cycles of your previous generations will continue to repeat over and over again on the next generation, because each generation passes down the thought process, mindsets, and generational familiarities of the mindsets that they grew up with onto that next generation. This happens a lot in the black community because of the fact that we came from slavery. And the mindsets that were ingrained in them over 300 years, coming up on the Juneteenth, the point in time in which the slaves were released from their, what you call, captivity. that you come into the understanding that you have to walk in a different pathway. And I remember it was about 6 years ago. I was sitting in a car talking to a friend of mine at the time, and we were talking, sitting near the library in the ghetto part of town, and I was sitting there thinking to myself, the biggest issue that you have with people in the black communities is the fact that their mindsets keep them in a perspective that they can't see past what it is that they are experiencing. And you get that 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 or whatever percent of people in those areas that can see this isn't a place to die. This is a place of opportunity, but we must chase after it. But those people are looked upon as the odd character and the odd person, and they're constantly being beat down and destroyed because of their perspective on their reality, due to the fact that they can see potential in their city. And when they start to move forward towards that purpose of trying to make a better development for everyone else, you run into the people in your community that are sitting up there, oh, you want to make the city better, but if we make the city better, guess what? The tax rates are going to go up on the houses, and we ain't even going to be able to afford to live here because of the gentrification of everything. Okay? Perspective. So you're going to have a whole bunch of people that sit up there to tell you, oh, this don't work, this ain't right, this not, nah. This isn't working for me. And they will beat your thought process into the ground if you have a positive perspective on life. And this is what happens if you take a teenager or a small child that sees life differently. They're going to have to do one of two things. They're either going to have to dumb themselves down and shut up because they do see life differently, and they realize that the people around them do not, and if they continue to express their opinion, the people around them are going to keep beating that opinion down until they no longer have one. So they have to keep it to themselves until they're old enough that they can get away from that situation, whether by going away to community college, going away to a university, going online university, or what have you, and they can develop their thought processes to build into those things by reading books, going through textbooks and so on and so forth. But as they're growing up, they're reading books and they're doing different things, but they're not telling the people around them because they have to protect the ideas, because their perspective on life is completely different. Why? Because they have a different pathway that they are following. A lot of people, if you listen, whether you're listening to mindset teachers, or you're listening to coaches, or you're listening to certain people that have viewpoints on things from a scientific, universal, what have you. I don't believe in that stuff. But you believe what you believe. Believe what you believe. I'm Christian all day. They will tell you that in order to create a new pathway, you must dig a new trench. In order for you to create a new perspective, you must see things from a different pathway. So you have to create the path, because everyone around you ain't going to see it. This is why in the scripture you hear people say, do not cast your pearls to swine. Okay? Because if you give your good ideas to people that cannot handle it, they will beat those ideas down until they become impossible for you to do, because of the fact that you are the one that's meant to do it, and two, They want to keep you in their comfortable state. It's an ironic thing how the people around you want to keep you with them. So this is why you have crabs in the barrel mentality, is because when they see one of their own starting to accelerate or get away from them, what they begin to do is say, wait a minute. That person's getting away. What do crabs do? They start grabbing at your leg. So they start snapping and telling their perspective, and what you call gaslighting you, by creating a surrounding perspective around you that creates a reality to tell you that that place is not safe, that you're trying to go. So the walking of the road is, what perspective do you see your path? Do you see a sunshiny day path where you're walking on a clear path and the sun is out and it's clear and it looks much like, you see that? Trees. You're looking through the bars of the gate on my father's porch, but you see how all those trees? But some people may have the perspective of, you may be looking through the lattice and all they see is the lattice and the bars. Some people look at it as you're trapped behind this lattice and the bars, but all you have to do is go downstairs. All you have to do is go to where that thing is. What is the perspective? Sometimes people aren't even willing to take the initiative step to go down the steps to go outside. Because a person can have a positive perspective on what it is that they're doing, and then they can have a negative perspective. For example, positive, you can chase the sky because the sky is the limit. There are a lot of people that will chase but not see that limit in that sky. A lot of us won't keep going no matter what the obstacle is around us. And the second that we see obstacles, we start to think negative. Negative, you have a Bible verse that says that we saw them as grasshoppers in our eyes, that they cannot do that big thing because of their thinking. Their thinking will make them think things are bigger than what they really already are, and prescribing to things being bigger. Elevation. I remember a few years back, I was going through a season, and I like to call it the elevated bed, because if you're on an elevated bed, if you're on the elevated bed, you're looking at things from the top level down. Your perspective is from above down. If I took this phone and I were to go like this, I'm above, am I not? And you can see things that are down there. But I'm above what's down there. So it's an elevation. There were some videos I was watching a month or so back of what you call it, some videos on Instagram, Twitter, but I think it was Instagram. Instagram had, like, you know, they had the vacation videos, and one of them, it showed you the viewpoint of a city, And I think it was either Dubai or one of those major expensive cities over. I love looking at stuff like that because I'm not one that's mentally limited to the abilities of my mind. So I'm not going to sit up there and say because I can't afford it, I can't look at it. Because who's to say that I can't afford it? I serve a God that owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. So if you want me to have it, I have it. I'll be there, I'll go there, and he'll have it so that all expenses are paid for me. I was always that kid that will watch the shows, what you call it? The Rich and Famous. What is it? Yeah, it's The Rich and Famous. And Fabulous Lives of the Rich and Famous. And I would watch those shows and I would listen to the prices. I was like, they would be like, oh, this yacht vacation costs $3,000. And I was like, that's all? Oh, this house costs $300,000. That's all? I was that person that the amounts would be like horrendously huge. And I knew at the time I definitely couldn't afford it. But at the same time, I'd be like, oh, that's all? Because I've always had the mindset of a millionaire. Because to me, those prices, they should have sounded extremely intimidating. But I was like, that's all? Oh, it's $600,000. That's all? Oh, that costs about $1 million. That's it? The house is $1.5 million. Really? That's all? Barely making $8 an hour, but I could look at stuff like, that's it? 2.5 million. That's all? Because I had a mindset for money. I had a mindset for millions. And granted, if you follow me long enough, we're going to get to them financial videos, because I'm going to post some over here as well as the ones that I post on my I'm going to be doing the podcast, and I'm also going to be doing some on my other YouTube channel, so stay tuned for that. But we're going to be talking about finances. Your sky is your limit, not everybody else's. What are you willing to do, and how are you willing to set up your steps to get there? You can get there, and some of it's not even that. Some of it is, there's a scripture that goes, prove me not that I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing that you shall not have room enough to receive. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over shall man give into thy bosom with the same measure of faith in which you have. Do you have faith enough to believe that with the faith, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, that the finances can come to you? Everybody sits up there and is like, ooh, the universe and manifestation and the laws of attraction. Do you know all of that's based on biblical teachings? Think and Grow Rich talks about ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be open. You know that's biblical. It's in the Bible 11 different times. Excuse me? What are you talking about? I digress. But that is something that you shall see. But I'm not going to make this much longer because we understand the elevation. It's all about perspective and viewpoint. How you see things will determine how things will appear to you, how you will move towards them, and whether you will be held stagnant and not be able to get to where you're supposed to go. Okay? So my theme and understanding to you is gain perspective, understand what it is you truly desire and move toward that thing. As you move toward that thing, you will come to the understanding that it's not as difficult as it appears to be, because faith without works is dead. But faith is a substance of the thing that you are hoping to achieve, but you do not see it yet. There is a process and it's a pathway to get there. But it's all about your perspective as you're walking that pathway that makes the difference. So for the ministry, this is Taj McCameron. Much love, faith, peace, and blessings to you. Until next time, bye-bye.